That would be they'll be doing very well, but gaining just half of that, say 200 seats, would suggest their pro-Remain strategy, whilst working against Labour, isn't working so well in the Tory shires. And on the other side of the Brexit coin, of course, is UKIP. Now, of course, they've lost virtually every seat they've contested in recent electoral cycles. They'll be just looking to try and cling on to as many of the 176 that they're defending as possible. And if they do so, they'll be able to claim that they've had a better election than they've had for many years indeed. But it's a bitty night so far, I think, Sophie. But clearly, the Labour Party not doing nearly as well as they'd hoped. But of course, we must impress upon viewers that Labour, in these early results, they've really had a lot more work to do. They've been defending a lot more seats. The Conservatives' big defences are yet to come.
Thank you, Lewis. Well, talking about some of those Conservative defences, we do have a result to bring you. It's Southend-on-Sea. The Conservatives have lost it to no overall control. We can have a look there at how the seats have been changing hands. The Conservatives down 8 on 20 seats. Labour have gained 2, they're on 14. The Independents up 3 on 12. Good night again for the independent candidates. And the Lib Dems are up 3. Worth pointing out the Conservatives only managed to gain Southend-on-Sea last year. But perhaps, again, following a bit of a pattern that we've been picking out of Labour doing a little bit better in the south of England than in the north. The Conservatives there losing Southend-on-Sea to no overall control. Feels like a good time to bring in our election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher. Here we are at 2:30 in the morning. Where are we at now?
Well, we're a sixth of the way through the 248 councils or so. In terms of the overall picture, if you like, the Conservatives and Labour are both losing. The two principal established parties are losing ground. Lib Dems are advancing, and so are also independents. And that's why we're seeing more councils being lost by the major parties into no overall control. That was the pattern when the Liberal Democrats were quite strong in local government. Many councils were no overall controlled, and we're seeing a resurgence of that pattern. It is important that for Labour, they've lost ground in parts of the metropolitan boroughs, like, for example, Wirral and Walsall. And really, at this stage of the Parliament, that shouldn't be happening to the main opposition party in what is, after all, their heartland. And they will now look from now until 4 o'clock, when quite a lot of southern shire districts will declare their results. Labour must start to gain ground in these areas. Otherwise, this is going to turn into a rather disappointing set of local council elections for them.
OK, thank you, Michael Thrasher. Another Conservative loss to bring you, because the Conservative Party has lost St Albans to no overall control. The Lib Dems, the big gainers there, they're up 7 seats on 25 as a total. The Conservatives down 8. The Independents up 1. Worth pointing out that St Albans voted Remain. 63% of people in St Albans voting Remain. One of the biggest Remain voting areas that we'll look at tonight. So the Lib Dems picking up seats there at the expense of the Conservative Party. You're watching Vote 2019, the local elections, live on Sky News. These are live pictures in Stoke-on-Trent. We're still waiting for the results there. You're watching Vote 2019, the local elections, live on Sky News. You're looking now at the current state of the parties. Labour on 418 seats, that's down 42. They've also lost control of 2 councils on 23. The Conservative Party have lost 49 seats, they're on 231, and they've lost control of 3 councils. Better night so far for the Lib Dems, who are up 42 seats, and the Green Party up 10 as well. UKIP have lost 8 seats so far, but perhaps the biggest winners of the night are independent councillors, up 47 seats, and 5 councils are going to no overall control. Well, there are already signs that both of the big parties have had disappointing results, with both losing control of some councils. There's also evidence of the anger that many voters feel towards the parties. Images shared on social media of ballot papers spoiled in protest at the delay to Brexit. Well, let's have a look now at some of the significant council results that have come in so far. We can start in Peterborough, where the Conservatives have lost control of the council after losing 4 seats. The Conservatives have also lost control in Tandridge. No party now has overall control there. But in Walsall, the Conservatives picked up 2 seats from Labour and gained control of the council. And in Wirral, Labour has lost control of the council after losing 4 seats. No party now has overall control there. And it's a similar story in Hartlepool, where Labour has lost 5 seats and control of the council. And the Conservative Party has also lost control of Basildon Council. Well, we mentioned Peterborough there, didn't we? So let's cross to our chief political correspondent, John Craig, who's there with some guests. John, who have you got with you?
Well, I have with me Wayne Fitzgerald, who is, first of all, the Deputy Leader of Peterborough Council, but perhaps more significantly, the Chairman of the Peterborough Conservative Association, and one of those Conservative Party chairmen and women who has written to the National Convention telling the party bosses that it's time Theresa May quit immediately. I've also got the leader of the Lib Dem group, Nick Sanford, on Peterborough Council. Just clarify those numbers, Sophie. You said Tories had lost 4. They gained 1. So it's Tories down to 28 from 31. Labour up 5 from 12 to 17. Lib Dems up 2 from 7 to 9. Greens up 1 from 1 to 2. So no overall control. But the Tories are going to cling on to power with the help of a rag bag of independents and others. Probably being a bit rude, a bit unfair, a bit harsh there. Nice people. Wayne Fitzgerald. Tories not doing too bad. OK, down a bit. But why do you want to get rid of the Prime Minister?
OK, look, I'll deal with that first then. OK, the Peterborough constituency very much voted to leave. The Prime Minister has said many times, 108 has been well reported, that we'll leave on the 29th of March. Where are we now? 3rd of May. So is Theresa May the solution? Many in my constituency, in my association, don't think she is. So I've conveyed that message to the National Convention, and that is representative of the constituency. So it speaks for itself. We are where we are. We didn't leave, and I don't see any prospect of leaving. And whether or not she will provide the solution is the question. So it needs some more discussion and debate.
Has she damaged the Tories tonight in these elections?
Not her personally. I have a great deal of respect for Theresa May.
You want to get rid of her?
Well, yeah, but, you know, look, on a human level, any politician that gives that kind of dedication, no matter what party they're in, deserves some respect. But sometimes, you know, you have to give in. You have to move aside and let somebody else have a go. Because the fact is, we have not been able to leave the European Union. And the current crop of MPs aren't helping. So I don't know where we're going, but maybe somebody else could negotiate with the EU and we just reset the clock. I'd be happy with that, but we're getting nowhere.
Who would you like to lead the Conservative Party?
I don't know the runners and riders.
Come on, of course you do. We all know the runners and riders.
It changes every day.
Well, normally when people won't say it's because they want Boris Johnson.
No, look, I think Boris Johnson is a very charismatic speaker and he's a very articulate politician. But I also have a great deal of respect for Jeremy Hunt. You know, he has a different approach. So let's see who the runners and riders are in that leadership competition, and then I am one man, one vote, like any member of the party. But I think it's never who you think it's going to be, and it's got to come from within the party. But look, let me just return this, if I may. This has been a good night for the Conservatives in Peterborough in difficult circumstances, because the angst on the doorstep has all been about Brexit. But most sensible people, you can turn them round and say, look, the Conservatives are doing a great job in Peterborough. We don't say so. Our auditors do. This is about your local daily issues. And next week, tomorrow, we will still be running this council.
Nick Sanford, you've not been a bad night for the Liberal Democrats. You've picked up a few here and you've picked up quite a few around the country. Brexit backlash in favour of the Remainers, perhaps?
Well, certainly our policy on Brexit's absolutely clear. You know, we want a referendum on the final deal. We want Britain to remain as part of the EU. That's absolutely clear. I think, you know, we've had a really solid move forward here. We've actually gained 2 seats. We came tantalising close to gaining 2 additional seats, which would have turned a good result into a really spectacular one for us. And we're also gaining seats across the country.
What do you think the results here tonight mean for the by-election on the 6th of June?
Well, I think, we just heard from the chairman of the local Conservative Party that illustrates what turmoil the Conservatives are in over Brexit. They're just literally falling to pieces. So I think that's going to have some interesting ramifications as far as the parliamentary by-election is concerned.
Theresa May is still going to be leader on the 6th of June, isn't she? Are you expecting a drubbing on the 6th of June in the by-election?
I don't take that for granted. Who knows what will happen on the 6th of June? We've got a great candidate, Paul Bristow. He's a good campaigner. But let's just put this in perspective. When Fiona Onasanya voted in the Commons just a few weeks ago on a one vote that changed a decision, Paul Bristow would have voted the other way, and that may have been different. Look, the fact is Peterborough voted to leave the EU. A lot of Tories, in terms of disgruntled Remainers, did switch to Lib Dem. I had personal experience of that, because they are seen to be the party of Remain. But hang on, 17.4 million people voted to leave the EU. And it seems nobody wants to enact the will of the people. What on earth is going on?
What about the 16 million that voted to remain then?
Well, they lost the vote, Nick. It doesn't matter whether it's by one. They lost the vote. Would you have said the same tonight if you'd have lost or won a seat by one? Oh, well, the other party lost. Of course they lost. So the referendum result should be carried out. And everybody says that. Many Remainers now say that they don't like the betrayal of British democracy. And that's what it is.
Are you saying that because... Are you saying that... people feel you're concerned because you've got the jitters about Nigel Farage and the Brexit Party. He's got a rally here now on Tuesday, I hear.
He has. Look, Nigel Farage is about Nigel Farage.
But his party's doing well in the polls.
Last time,
isn't one reason why your party wants to dump the leader because you're fretting about Nigel Farage?
No, I'm not fretting about Nigel Farage. Last time Nigel Farage was in town, I was part of the Vote Leave campaign. I had a beer with Nigel Farage. He's very entertaining. He's a very entertaining, enigmatic
man. Who paid?
I think I paid, actually. But there again, that is about Nigel Farage's bank balance. But in all seriousness, look, we've had George Galloway
he's standing,
declaring he's going to stand. Nigel Farage may stand himself even. He's not ruled it out. He ruled it out for UKIP, but hey-ho, he's coming here Tuesday. Will that be the big announcement? Or has he got somebody up his sleeve? Look, the Conservative Party have been around a long time. Ideology doesn't change. Brexit is an issue that will go away eventually, one way or the other. And Nigel Farage, look, the stupid thing is, he says he wants to be a big force in British politics. Why the hell did you call yourself the Brexit Party? It's pretty one-dimensional.
You're hogging this debate.
Sorry.
Let me just ask Nick Sanford. Are you concerned your party gets squeezed in the by-election? It'll all be about Labour, Brexit and the Tories and you'll get squeezed?
It'll certainly be about Brexit, but, we've got a clear policy on Brexit. Where I take issue with Wayne is that if he's so keen on the will of the people allowed to be expressed, we're now 3 years on from the original referendum. A lot's changed. We know people were lied to during the last referendum campaign. If he's so keen on the will of the people, why not give the people the final say? That's the question he needs to answer.
Referendum, yes or no? We're out of time.
No, I don't feel I was lied to. It's a loser's vote, a second referendum.
All right.
And the Leave vote won. Simple as that.
All right. Thank you both very much indeed. So there we have a Conservative who wants the Prime Minister to go and a Lib Dem, of course, who wants a second referendum, as you might expect.
No surprise.
Thank you very much, John Craig. Now, it's not just councils who are counting up the votes tonight. We've also got a few mayoral contests that are taking place as well. We've got the first result from the Middlesbrough mayor, and we can say that it's actually been won by the independent candidate, Andy Preston. More signs of a good night for independent candidates. He's going to be taking over from the current mayor, who is Labour. Worth pointing out that back in 2015, the Labour candidate only won by 256 votes, the independent candidate Andy Preston coming second. Well, now he's overturned that. On 58% of the vote, Andy Preston will be the new mayor of Middlesbrough. Well, it's also all over in Swindon, so we can hear now from Dan Whitehead, who's been following proceedings for us. And what do you make of what's happened tonight in Swindon?
Well, the Tories went into tonight's local election here in Swindon genuinely fearing that they could lose control of the council. For the first time since 2004, they were in a position where if they lost 2 seats, that was going to happen. It was a bigger victory than they could have imagined. There were 19 seats up for grabs tonight. All of them stayed the same, bar one. It was a Conservative victory from a Labour stronghold, Penhill, always been Labour. And so they're seeing it as a massive victory. And it's of huge disappointment as well to Labour. The Labour leader here telling Sky News that they threw the kitchen sink at these local elections. They did last year, they did this year, and they just simply haven't been able to make a dent on what has been a long-standing Conservative council. The Swindon Borough Council elects by thirds, so it holds elections nearly every year by one. And last year, Jeremy Corbyn, the Labour leader, came here 5 times in around 6 months. So they really have pushed the boat out. But Labour failed to gain any seats, and the Conservatives remained control. But what was interesting, what we're seeing across the country in the message from both the Conservatives and from the Labour Party here is that Brexit was on the minds of many people. It may well have prevented some people coming out disillusioned. We've seen that with gains from independent candidates across the country. But you look around the spoiled ballot boxes in front of the counters here tonight, and there were plenty of them. Brexit stickers on them, people writing Brexit. I saw dozens and dozens of those, and that key issue remains. But it's not just Brexit. The local politics continues here. In Swindon, the Honda plant will close in 2.5 years. That's the plan from Honda. That's 3,500 jobs. So the Conservatives have kept hold of Swindon Borough Council, but they've got a tough ride. It'll be interesting to see how the local elections continue with such big local issues like job losses coming up.
Thank you, Dan. Well, with us, as all the results come in, we're joined by our panel. We've got John McTernan, a political strategist and commentator, former Labour advisor to Tony Blair. We're also joined by Emma Barr, who is the head of communications for the Centre of Policy Studies, a former press officer at Conservative campaign headquarters. We're joined as well by Mo Hussein, who is the head of public affairs and campaigns at PLMR, former special advisor to Amber Rudd. And we're now joined by Sian Berry, who is the co-leader of the Green Party. New face around our panel. Thank you very much for joining us. Seems to be quite a good night so far for the Green Party.
It is quite a good night for us so far. And we've got 14 seats showing on your scoreboard there. But look at the proportion that are gains. We've got 12 gains so far. And a lot of those gains are breakthrough councillors onto whole new councils in places like Sunderland, South Tyneside, St Helens, Exeter, Colchester, places all around the country, and not always places where you might expect Greens to be winning. This is the result of a long-term build-up of hard work in these areas to get those first Greens across the line. And when they get elected, these 1 Greens, 2 Greens on different councils, they make a whole lot of difference, and so we'll start to grow from there.
That does seem to be the point, actually, doesn't it? Because you really associate the Green Party with Brighton, obviously, where you've done very well historically, and also London. So why do you think this breakthrough, if you like, has come in some other areas?
We've had big groups of councillors and lots of other places as well, like Sheffield, York, Bristol, famously Norwich. We've had big groups on Solihull as well, so don't let me forget to mention Solihull. So we've got these big groups already, but we haven't yet seen their results come up. These defences are not yet being seen. These are places where we're just breaking through. And I think what you have to remember is these are the elections that come from 4 years ago. So they could be very tough elections for us. 4 years ago in 2015, we just had a massive surge of new members, new activists and new support. We had the best election result in the general election that year than we'd ever had before. So defending the seats that we won that time, you'd think would be tough for us. But actually, what's happened since then is our new members who joined, they suddenly had the ability to try and win seats in whole new towns and cities. And that's what they've been doing for 4 years. They've been working hard on the ground, actually listening to people, which often these big councils that are one-party states don't do. So that's why we're winning in these places. And that's why people who are political commentators and just focusing on Brexit and the big issues are perhaps not expecting this. Obviously, climate change is a big issue in the news too.
Another reason that people might not be expecting it is, these seats last fought in 2015. Since then, we've had a very left-wing leader of the Labour Party take over. So why do you think that hasn't eaten into the vote share of the Green Party, another left-wing party?
Well, I mean, there's two answers to that. One is these big one-party state councils that take their voters for granted. A lot of them are Labour councils, but they're not Corbynite Labour councils. They're big, sort of, they've been around for a very long time. They have been neglectful of their communities. They're maybe not listening. They're doing big developments or destroying green space or cutting down trees like in Sheffield, and the Greens are there standing up against those things. So there's that. But also, I mean, I'm London, and we've had two very good elections in London, which is, the heart of Corbynism in lots of ways, in recent years, despite it being Corbyn fever. So the 2016 London election, I came third. We held up our vote really, really well, cemented our place ahead of the Lib Dems in London. And then last year's council elections, we massively increased our representation on councils across London again. And again, in the face of Corbynite councils like Islington doing their very best to wipe out the councillors that we did have. We had Jeremy Corbyn himself in my colleague Caroline Russell's seat trying to get rid of her. She topped the poll, so we can do it.
OK, there you go. Thank you very much for being with us. We'll be back to you in a moment. Emma Barr, let's bring you in now, shall we? I mean, we were expecting losses for the Conservative Party. The question was always going to be about how many losses. So at the minute, we can see our State of the Party's ticker, the Conservatives down 51 seats in 3 councils. I mean, how would you rate the performance?
I think, as you said, we were expecting losses for the Conservatives. We're 9 years into Conservative premiership, and that is pretty much what you would expect. I think the real...
It's not just that, though, is it? It's also, the Brexit impasse. It's
there are lots of different factors, but if you look at where Labour were about this time in their premiership, I think they were down about 4,000 seats, and we're down, I think, 51 now, but I think we're expecting about 500 now is the prediction. So, in comparison, I think we're doing all right, and certainly not as bad as Labour are compared to their expectations.
OK. And what do you think would happen, though, if the Brexit Party was standing? I mean, because it does feel as if the Conservative Party are doing slightly better in some of those Leave areas, aren't they? If the Brexit Party was standing, it might be a different story.
I think, it might be in some of the Leave areas. I think we'll see when we get to the European elections, to be honest, because that's much more about that single issue. I think there's a lot of local issues that also come into play. So I think it's quite hard to differentiate why different people are voting for different councillors.
And how much pressure do you think there could be on Theresa May after these results? When we were just hearing there John Craig interviewing a councillor in Peterborough who was calling for her to go.
Yeah, go respectfully, I think, was what he was saying.
He respects her, but he still wants her out.
I actually don't think this is going to make much of a difference. I think that we're sort of performing how we were expected to, or slightly better. I don't think this is going to have much of an impact on her as leader either way, to be honest.
And how about Jeremy Corbyn, John McTernan? Do you think there'd be more pressure on him?
Look, I think Jeremy is in position as leader till he wants to go. I mean, he's won 2 leadership elections. There's no point in beating about the bush. I think if I was Jeremy and Jeremy's advisors, I'd be very worried by the rise of the Green Party, because there's more than one issue in British politics at the moment. We've seen with the big demonstrations about about climate change. We've seen David Attenborough and plastic in the sea. The public are really concerned in all kinds of ways about this, and a Labour Party heading for government would be sweeping up all these votes. There wouldn't be people going, do you know what, on environment I'm going to vote for the Greens, on Brexit I might vote for the Lib Dems. The opposition party should be pulling all the discontent together, and I think we all know that Brexit's soaking up all our energy, but the voters are taking different views here, and as we've been saying, when we come to the European elections, I expect the Brexit party to power through because they've got such a clear proposition.
We'll be hearing more from the panel as the night unfolds. What we can hear a little bit now from our election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher, and another member of our election analysis team, Professor Will Jennings. Will, let's go to you first. You've been crunching through some of the figures. Are we seeing any patterns in the voting?
So we've been looking at returns from wards, and what we're seeing actually, despite all the expectations around the Conservatives being punished by disaffected Brexit voters, their votes actually faring better in areas that voted to leave the EU in 2016. Labour's vote, much like its kind of position on Brexit, is pretty kind of flat across whether areas voted to leave or remain. And what we're seeing is the Liberal Democrats seem to be doing better in areas that voted to remain. So there is something there in terms of Brexit structuring the vote that we're seeing in the local election so far.
OK, and Michael Thrasher, to you now. What's your reaction to some of those results that are coming in? It's now just before 3 in the morning.
Yes, they're just appear to be a swing against the two established parties, the two parties that have really been slugging it out over Brexit there. And I think local voters have simply gone to the polling station and said, you know, I can't bring myself to vote Conservative. I really don't want to vote for Labour. So who else is on the ballot paper? And the Liberal Democrats are also benefiting not only in places that we'll refer to there, but they're picking up the odd seat or two in places that will strongly leave. So you've got these people who voted to leave the EU supporting a party that is strongly pro-EU. But of course, they haven't gone to the Lib Dems because of their Brexit position. They've simply gone there because that's the only place in town, if you like, that they can vote. But also, astonishingly, it's independents, these small micro parties that have grown up in these local or council areas, and they've presented candidates and they're doing rather well because, again, people have gone to the polling station and said, right, I can't bring myself to vote for the mainstream parties. Oh, look, there's an independent there. I'm going to vote for them. And so we've seen them. They're the biggest net winners at this stage of the night. And as we go through into the wee small hours of today and Friday afternoon, of course, we can expect in other parts of the country, independents will not only gain seats, but they may well gain control of a council or two.
OK, thank you both for your analysis. And on that note about independents doing well, we can see that the Copeland Mayor, the independent candidate Mike Starkey, has won with an increased majority. Let's go to Lewis Goodall now, shall we? Lewis, nearly at 3 in the morning, what's your assessment of how the results have been unfolding?
Well, Sophia, I think it's got to be really disappointing for Labour. We shouldn't forget, we're in the 9th year of this Conservative government, or coalition Conservative government. An opposition party at this stage of the electoral cycle should be making leaps and bounds into Conservative territory. And yet in some places, OK, we're seeing a few Labour pickups, in Basildon and a few places elsewhere as well. But in a lot of places, we're actually seeing the Labour Party go backwards. They've lost North East Lincolnshire, a council now the Conservatives, well, they didn't have North East Lincolnshire, I should say, but they've receded a little bit, and now the Conservatives have gained in North East Lincolnshire. They haven't gained Swindon, which they hoped to gain last time, and they didn't gain this time either. They've gone backwards in Walsall. The Conservatives have gained control of the council there. So you're seeing in many of these Brexit-dominated areas, the Conservatives, despite their failure to deliver Brexit, still managing to make advances with the sort of voters we saw them advance with in the general election in 2017 and the local elections in 2018. And what the Labour Party isn't being able to do, it seems, which they did quite successfully, certainly in 2017, to a limited extent in 2018, is continue to make advances with Romania, if you like. They're starting to lose those sort of voters to the Lib Dems, and we should note the Green Party as well. And this is going to be the dilemma, I think, for the Labour Party as they wake up in the morning and Jeremy Corbyn surveys these results. Lots more to come in, of course. But he's going to have Labour MPs in Remain areas who say, look, Jeremy, this really shows why our Brexit policy is wrong. And Leave MPs are going to be saying, look, Jeremy, this is why this shows our Brexit policy is wrong. And a scary thing for Jeremy Corbyn will be, they're both right.
Hey, Lewis, thank you for your analysis. Quick result to bring you now. The Conservative Party have held on to Malden, that's a council in Essex, but just look at that seat change. The Conservatives down 12 seats, Independents up 13. And really that is, again, telling the story of the night so far, which is that the Independents do seem to be the big gainers so far. They're up 69 seats. They've also won both of the mayoral contests that have been counting overnight. These are pictures from Stoke, one more council that we'll be bringing to you just as soon as we get those results. It's 3 o'clock and you're watching Vote 2019, the local elections, live on Sky News. Votes have been counted in councils across the UK. It's been a difficult night for mainstream parties. Voters have been reaching out for alternatives. Both the Conservatives and Labour have surrendered control of councils. But the Conservatives have achieved one of their targets, keeping hold of Swindon. Disappointment again for Labour. They will need to win back councils like Stoke if they're to show that they have the mettle to win a general election. And there is one overriding message from the ballot box: none of the above, as angry voters hit out over the Brexit failure. Hello, good morning. Theresa May has been battling the fury of her angry party for months. Now it's the public's turn to pass judgment on the Prime Minister and her party. So far, both the Conservatives and Labour have lost councils in this, the biggest democratic exercise since the last general election, with voters from some 250 councils having gone to the polls. Well, this is the state of the parties right now, and you can see there that Labour down 48 seats and 2 councils. The Conservatives, a similarly gloomy picture, on minus 62 seats and down 3 councils. A better night, though, for the Lib Dems, who are up 47 seats, and also for the Green Party, up 12 seats. UKIP, however, have only won 9 seats so far. They're down 19. But just look at that bottom column. That is the independent councillors. They're up 70 seats and plus 5 councils there on no overall control. Well, let's have a look at some of the more significant council results that have come in so far. We can start in Peterborough, where the Conservatives have lost control of the council after losing 4 seats. The Conservatives have also lost control in St Albans, where the Liberal Democrats have picked up 7 seats, leaving no party with overall control. And they've also lost control in Southend-on-Sea, where they've lost 8 seats. But in Walsall, it's a bit of a better picture for the Conservatives. They've picked up 2 seats from Labour and gained control of the council. In Wirral, Labour has lost control of the council after losing 4 seats. That means that no party now has overall control there. Well, Sky's Lisa Dowd is in Stoke for us tonight. It's the place where Jeremy Corbyn launched his local election campaign. A bit of a disappointing night so far from Labour. How important could Stoke be for turning that around?
Well, very important. It is a key Labour target, and we've just had the very first seat, one of 44 declared here in Stoke-on-Trent, and it is actually some good news for Labour because they've taken the seat from the city independent councillor. Stoke was traditionally a Labour stronghold, but in recent years control of the council has switched between Labour and no overall control. And in the last 4 years, it has been run by a coalition of Conservative councillors and city independents. And that party is made up of independent councillors, but also defectors from the likes of Labour, UKIP and the BNP. Now, Labour know they only have to make pretty marginal gains here to take the seat. So, as you say, Jeremy Corbyn very much focused on Stoke-on-Trent. He's made numerous mentions of it during Prime Minister's questions. But this is a city that has become known as the Brexit capital of Britain because of the huge 69.4% of voters voting for Brexit. And that has been the big challenge on the doorstep for councillors and activists to try to convince local people that these elections are nothing to do with Brexit, but local issues instead. We've been speaking to one of the Labour MPs and one of the Conservative MPs tonight. The Labour MP told us that she thought that independent councillors were going to be the big winners tonight and that the 2 main parties would be losing out. The Conservative MP told us that he would just be pleased to hang on to what they have here already.
Thank you, Lisa. Well, with us throughout the night is our panel of guests. We've just been joined by Marcus Jones, if you're wondering who the new face is around the table, the Vice Chairman of the Conservative Party. Thanks very much for being with us. I mean, the Conservatives, it feels like, won the expectation management game, didn't they? But at the same time, you're still down 62 seats and 3 councils so far. I mean, what's your assessment on how the night's been?
Well, I think this is always clearly going to be a very tricky night. We've been in government for 9 years. We're fighting a group of seats that was last contested in 2015. I don't know whether you remember my result in Nuneaton on that night, but it was...
I do remember your result on Nuneaton.
It was a fabulous night for the Conservatives, and in many places, particularly in the South East where we were against, and the South West we were against the Liberal Democrats, they had a complete meltdown, and therefore, as we know, they're at a 40-year low in terms of council seats. So I think it's been expected that the Liberal Democrats should be doing very well today, but it's also expected that the Labour Party should be doing well, and so far it looks as though they're really struggling. Look at the results in Sunderland, Swindon. It's a seat that's very important to the general election, and we've held all the seats there, and we actually took a seat which was being contested by the Labour parliamentary candidate.
I mean, you say that the Lib Dems were always expected to do well, but the real winners tonight, it seems to be so far, are the independents, which is almost like the none of the above party. And I just wonder if you consider that, you know, some of those independent candidates potentially UKIP defectors, whether that bodes ill for the European elections when you're going to be up against the Brexit party as well, aren't you?
Well, clearly it's going to be very challenging. And my view is we shouldn't have been getting to European elections, and that was certainly the Prime Minister's view. But if we do go into the European elections, it is going to be a challenge. But, you know, tonight has been all about the parties that have contested. And actually, when you look at, say, Sunderland, we've had a situation where UKIP have virtually had a full slate in Sunderland. The Conservatives have still won 4 seats, and Labour have lost 10.
At the same time, though, I mean, it's easy to kind of pick out the seats where Labour hasn't done as well as hoped, but there are also seats that the Conservatives would have hoped to have hold on to that you've lost as well. I mean, St Albans, for example, you know, these are places where you are being punished.
And this is really disappointing because clearly we have a lot of good quality councillors. We're running some very good councils, and unfortunately tonight some of those councillors have lost their seats, and that is very regrettable. But what I would say, Sophie, is that these are seats that were contested in 2015 when there was a massive turnout. In most of these areas, the turnout would have been 70–75%. And the effect of that, because of the Lib Dem collapse, was that we almost ended up with councils in these areas that were virtually Conservative one-party states. And I think that was always going to be a real challenge, given the fact that we've been in government 9 years.
I mean, there's been a lot of pressure, hasn't there, on Theresa May recently? Lots of your own colleagues calling for her to set out a timetable for her resignation, calling for her head. Do you think that the results tonight will have given her a bit of respite, or do you think that actually it will just add to the cause that it's time for a new leader?
Well, I keep using Sunderland as an example. I think that's a really interesting example because clearly in Sunderland, the Leave vote, the referendum was about 70%, if I recall. And what you've seen there, Labour have lost seats, we've gained 4, but UKIP have won seats, but the Lib Dems have won seats there, and there's a Green that's been elected. So I think it is more nuanced in terms of the argument. I was certainly on a doorstep this morning in my own... I've only had 2 wards up for election in my constituency, but this morning I spoke to 2 electors who were on their drive, and they were really strong Brexiteers. But they were also quite angry that people in the Conservative Party hadn't voted for the deal, and which meant we hadn't got out of the EU.
But the question is about the leadership, Theresa May's leadership. So we've been hearing a lot from Conservative councillors who've been angry about the leadership of the Conservative Party. I just wonder what you think the results so far will mean for that.
But as I say, I think it's more nuanced than that, because we're seeing a picture, even in very strong Leave areas, that people have clearly got a lot of different views as to how Brexit should be delivered. They clearly want Brexit to be delivered. I think the question will also be for some Labour members of Parliament, and I've met with the car manufacturers with Labour members of Parliament for the North East and the West Midlands who've effectively said, well, we're not backing the deal, but after the results in Sunderland, it makes you wonder whether they might want to think again.
OK, and thanks so much for your analysis of those results as they've come in. John McTernan, let's bring you in, shall we? We've just been discussing there some of those results like Sunderland. Marcus obviously trying to paint the rosiest picture possible for the Conservative Party. But he is right, isn't he, that actually you would have expected Labour to be doing better at this point?
Look, I think both the 2 main parties need to pause and think about this. Marcus can't be hoping that the Tories have any chance of winning either of the Sunderland seats. It's been a bad result in Sunderland for the Labour Party. But a minority Tory government, which is what it is, with DUP support, should be looking to be picking up votes, because it's got to be looking to pick up seats at the next election. St Albans is on its way back to the Liberal Democrats. So I think what you're seeing is the contours of another hung parliament emerging. Bad for Labour, absolutely, because Labour should be trying to power ahead if they want to be the next government. Bad for the Conservative Party, because they too need to be winning now. You can't sort of go, well, we've been in power for 9 years. That's basically an excuse for going, well, we've been in power for 9 years, we're probably going to lose next time. I mean, you've got to be kind of moving forward, and that's the problem is the public are looking at this and they're going, I think, to vote for people who've got a clear position. the stalemate between the Labour Party and the Tory Party in terms of getting a deal through Parliament, the Greens are clear what they want to do. The Lib Dems are clear what they want to do. And it's pretty clear there's a bunch of people making movements at local level to be independent. Some from, I think, UKIP to Brexit Party, who don't have an identity at local level yet. But these mayors being elected who are just saying, a plague on both your houses, that seems to be quite a big vote. And the European elections coming up are like a UK-wide by-election, and people have a big chance to send anybody a message.
Mo Hussein, a plague on both your houses. Do you think that's a kind of accurate assessment of how the night's been unfolding?
I don't think anybody should be kind of shouting from the rooftops, claiming a big victory on either side. They're clearly for both big political parties. There has been a sense of disappointment from the voters. I think what would be interesting to see is the makeup of the independents. I don't think they're a uniform group at all. And we have to remember that actually, when we're talking about Brexit, it's MPs who will be the ones who will vote on the deal and resolve it. So the Brexit Party does not have any MPs. The independents, there's an independent group, but they're not the same as the independents being voted tonight. So I don't think there's a natural read across or parallel in terms of necessarily all the bigger issues countries facing and maybe the protest votes that we are seeing tonight.
Yeah, do you want to come in there about I was quite interested in how you're talking about what it means for getting a Brexit deal.
But I think the challenge is that people are not being clear, and I think a lot of politicians are taking the situation and not understanding that the electorate is actually quite sophisticated, and the actual situation is personified by sort of Jeremy Corbyn's stance on this, I think, where he's almost sitting on the fence, and these MPs are trying to tell people in London, for example, that they're going to have a second referendum, and up north they're trying to tell people that they're going to back the referendum result.
At the same
people
time,
are seeing
though,
through it,
the Conservative Party are very split on Brexit as well, aren't they? Voters will be looking at the Conservative Party and seeing a divided party.
I can't deny there are challenges there, but what I can say is that there are many people in the Conservative Party, like myself, that have voted on a number of occasions now to leave the EU. And there has been that opportunity there, and clearly that hasn't been taken.
How frustrated are you with some of your colleagues?
I think it is frustrating. I think the public are frustrated. And as I say, I spoke to a couple on the doorstep this morning that were extremely frustrated. But I think where we get this wrong sometimes is that we think that everybody that is a strong Brexiteer is in one certain camp, and it's got to be, a no deal, for example. And sometimes, and Sunderland's an obvious example now, 70% leave vote, where actually it's more nuanced than that. And people are looking for a solution. People want us to leave the EU, and that's why going into the European elections will not be a clever thing for any of the mainstream political parties.
OK, well, thank you very much for your thoughts. We're coming back to the panel later. In the meantime, we can speak to Gareth Snell, who is the Labour MP for Stoke-on-Trent Central. He joins us now live. Thank you very much for being with us. What's your take on how Labour's performing so far?
Well, I think it's a very mixed picture up and down the country. I mean, in Stoke-on-Trent, the first declaration was a Labour gain for us, but we are, being quite honest, we're going to struggle in some of the wards where we were expecting to do better. And I understand from colleagues around the country that there have been big gains in some places and big losses in the others. So what that translates to, I'm not entirely sure yet, but certainly if you look at the results in the Midlands, there is still an awful lot of work to do before we are able to achieve that Labour government that we all want.
I mean, realistically, at this point, you would be expecting to do better than mixed results, wouldn't you? I mean, Labour currently, down 48 council seats and down 2 councils overall, pretty disappointing. I just wonder if you think that it's Labour's Brexit message that has perhaps been the problem?
I don't think it's necessarily just Labour's Brexit message, although, being very honest, I think that does clearly it doesn't work everywhere what we're saying. Where I think we're actually seeing in Stoke-on-Trent independents being elected, as has just happened behind me, in opposition and protest to what they see as being us having not got on with the job at hand in Westminster. And unfortunately, it is going to be local councillors who feel the brunt of the discontent of the electorate for issues that are being made in Westminster.
Can you paint us a bit of a picture on who these independent candidates are that are being elected?
So in Stoke-on-Trent, we've had an organised independent group for a while. You know, community activists. I mean, it's a merry band of ex-BNP. One of their independents is a former registered child sex offender, so it's not exactly all lovely people, but they're getting elected on an anti-politics ticket, and I think that up and down the country we will see more people casting votes that are against politics and are in favour of something.
So why isn't Labour picking up those protest votes? I mean, you are the party of the opposition, after all.
I think it's partly, again, frustration at politics as a whole. And, the Labour Party is one of the two major political parties in the United Kingdom. And it is not unforeseeable that we will feel the brunt of discontent towards politics in general, even if it is not necessarily us that are in power in Westminster. And again, I will be urging my colleagues in London and in Westminster next week to really look at the results in the Midland towns and counties that we need to win, in places like Walsall, in Stoke-on-Trent South, in Mansfield, in Derbyshire North East. And look, what are we being told by the voters if they're not electing us to run those local authority areas and we're not winning councillors in those places?
OK, Gareth Smell, thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us this evening.
Thank you.
Well, results have been coming in thick and fast. Both main parties have had a mixed bag so far. Our political correspondent, Lewis Goodall, is at the Sky News Centre with an assessment of how the parties are doing. Lewis.
Yes, Sophie, we're getting a really good idea now of how well the parties are doing at these local elections. Of course, we shouldn't forget they're the biggest exercise in democracy this side of a general election, pretty much. So let's have a look at some of the key contests that we've had so far. Now, roughly, and we have to update these as we come in, of course, so this might be off a little bit, but roughly the Conservatives have lost about 62 seats. They had by far the biggest number to defend, about 5,000 or so, but they haven't had a terrible performance. Indeed, they've even had some victories in North East Lincolnshire. For example, they've gained majority control of that council for the first time since its creation in 1995. It seems they're continuing to advance in strongly Brexit voting areas, despite their failure, funnily enough, to deliver Brexit. But never mind. They also thought they might lose control of Swindon Council. Labour targeted that last time, and they targeted it this year, but we've had that result in, and the Tories are projected to hold that council as well. But lots of Tory defences, we shouldn't forget this, are still being counted. They're losing ground in some places. For example, in Southend, they've lost control of that council, losing 8 seats to a combination of Labour, the Lib Dems and the Independents. Now, for Labour, they've had about 48 losses so far. Well, you might think, well, that's not too bad. It's about the same as the Tories. But no, of course, they are an opposition party in the 9th year of opposition. They shouldn't be losing ground anywhere, but in every direction they seem to be. For example, in Walsall, the Tories gained Walsall from no overall control to 2 seats, and they took 2 seats from the Labour Party to do it. Now, the Liberal Democrats, and I suspect this is what we're going to hear a lot about over the next 24 hours, Lib Dems are having a good night. They've already won about 47 seats. They'd hoped to have about 400 seats. They've had some very solid results against Labour in places like Liverpool and Newcastle. I'm also told, just in the last hour or so, by Lib Dem sources, they're hoping to make some really big gains from the Tories in the shires in the south of England. Many of the results we're yet to have. And, of course, then we have UKIP, down the joker of the pack there. They're losing most of their seats now, as they have done in previous years. Lost 19 so far. They haven't got that many left. Of course, they've actually done well to hang on. I think they've hung on to about 9, which is considerably more than they've hung on to in previous years. But it's a patchy result, Sophie, so far, but nonetheless really clear that the main parties are suffering. The question is, exactly what message do they take from it?
That is the question. Lewis Goodall, thank you very much for that analysis. Well, we can get a bit more analysis now with Sky's election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher. Michael, Lewis talking there about the smaller parties doing better than expected this time, picking up votes from the 2 main parties. What do you think the message is there?
Well, there's no dispute about the decline of the vote share for the 2 main parties. That's not in doubt at all. Right, so the Tory vote is down compared with the 2015. The Labour vote, similarly, is down. If you look at the change in share for those 2 parties, it's more or less balances out with the rise in vote share for the Liberal Democrats. So in a sense, what is happening is that some Tory voters are switching to the Lib Dems. Some Labour voters are probably switching to the Lib Dems. But what is interesting is the share of vote for others is more or less flat. Now, we know that in many areas where UKIP stood in 2015, they're not standing this time because they simply haven't been able to find the candidates. But what is happening with that vote is that the people have started to vote for local independents. So we've seen Hartlepool, Malden, Thurrock is a very good case in point where UKIP did well in Thurrock in 2015, but then it broke up into quite a number of different parts, and now it's contested by the Thurrock Independents. The Thurrock Independents stood in 2018 and they won 1 seat, but of course now they're much stronger there because of people trying to going to the polling stations and saying, who can I vote for? I'm going to vote for the Thurrock Independents. So we see this shift in support away from UKIP as a party and towards these smaller independent parties. Not necessarily former UKIP parties, but often people who are campaigning on very, very local issues.
Michael Thrasher, thank you much for your analysis. Well, let's have a look at another seat, shall we, that's changed hands tonight. We can go to North East Lincolnshire. That result coming in a little bit earlier. The Conservatives gaining from no overall control. North East Lincolnshire, of course, contains Grimsby, heavy Leave seat there. 70% of people voting Leave, and the Conservatives up 5 seats. Labour down 6, and UKIP picking up 1 there. Let's talk now, shall we, to Nia Griffith, who is the Labour MP for Llanelli, the Shadow Secretary of State for Defence. Thank you very much for being with us. I mean, we're just looking there at what happened in North East Lincolnshire. Are you worried about how Labour's doing so far?
Well, I think it's very early yet. I mean, there are a lot of results still to come, many not until later this afternoon, in fact. And I think what we have seen also is we have seen Conservative losses, and particularly in places like Southend, Basildon, St Albans. I mean, there are clearly patterns here emerging where perhaps people have seen an awful lot of television and perhaps they're moving away from the main parties because of some of the stuff that they've seen, and they are perhaps opting for independence, and particularly local factors I think will play. But I also think that people will be blaming their local councils for the cuts which are coming from the Conservative government but have to be delivered on the ground by local councillors. So I think you will see some reaction there, and sometimes we've actually seen Conservative council candidates on the ground blaming a Labour council for cuts which are in fact coming from a Conservative government.
Okay.
And
so the Labour Party is
sometimes there's a hammering
because of Conservative cuts.
Absolutely, because if you're closing facilities, then it's very, very easy for an opposition candidate to whip up support for opposing the closure of a library, the closure of a Shores Arts Centre, cuts to school staffing, regardless of the fact that the actual source of that cut is actually coming from central government.
Okay.
And so that does happen in some areas, and it's not an easy time for local councils at the moment at all.
I mean,
but we are seeing
of
independence,
course, there are key local issues in lots of these councils as well, but Brexit is a factor as well. And one real trend that we've sort of noticed from the results coming in tonight is the Conservative Party doing better in Leave areas. I just wonder if you think that perhaps Labour's, keeping a second referendum on the table, some of those very vocal supporters in your party for a people's vote, do you think that is hurting Labour in some of those Brexit seats?
Well, I think the problem is that it's an incredibly complex issue, and I think just to try to analyse so many different seats in one sentence would be incredibly difficult.
But it's a trend that we are seeing.
One of the things that we as a Labour Party do is that we do have representatives, and we do represent people right across all parts of England, Wales and Scotland. And what we are seeing is we're seeing some quite mixed results. I mean, we're very clear that we want to put the good of the country first, and that we want the sort of situation where jobs and the economy are protected, whether that is through some sort of Leave agreement or whether it's through saying to people that what's on the table is not acceptable, and therefore we go back to people to have an opportunity to vote on whatever package is there. So the issue is, if you look at Sunderland, for example, where we haven't obviously seen a move against Labour there, but 5 of those seats were going to Remain parties. So out of the 10 losses, 5 going to Remain. So, you know, it's not an easy picture.
So in that
and you might
case, are you
look at
worried?
Sunderland and you might say, well, that's a very strong Leave area, but that's actually what's happened. So it's a very mixed. It's a very mixed bag.
Labour's position is perhaps the worst of both worlds, because you have the Lib Dems and the Greens, for example, unequivocally behind a second referendum. You have a Conservative Party, which for many people voting today, the closest thing to a Brexit party that they have a chance of voting for, and perhaps Labour is falling between the two camps.
I think it is a very difficult position to be in, but I do think that it is the most realistic in terms of trying to be responding to the largest number of people across the country, because the issue is that an extreme Brexit is absolutely no good for anybody, and the position that we are in is saying, look, what we can have is something in the middle which protects jobs and protects the economy. And of course it's difficult, and especially when we've just also had a fortnight of climate change being the dominant feature on our TV screens. Again, that's obviously going to have pushed up the Green vote.
So if you were going to do some real soul searching and look at the results so far, I'm just looking at my screen now, 54 losses when it comes to seats, 2 councils down. What are the lessons that you think the Labour Party should learn?
Well, I think, again, the analysis that you're making, let's have a look at some of the Labour gains and some of the areas where we've actually, Trafford, for example. I mean, this is a very, very wealthy part of Manchester, a very mixed part of Manchester.
In opposition for a long time so far. I know that you have made some gains, and it's absolutely right to say that the Conservatives have made some very significant losses as well, but shouldn't you be doing a bit better? Or is there nothing to be learned from it so far?
Well, I think there are always things to be learned from elections, and I think the lesson on this one is very much, it's a lot of local factors, but I think there is an issue where people are generally turned off politics, and I think that's a lesson that we all have to take very, very seriously, and that re-engaging and that responding to people's anger with constructive change is very much what we need to be about.
And why do you think it is that the kind of protest vote, if you like, is not going to Labour, it's going to some of the other parties, going to the Independents, for example, it's going to the Lib Dems?
Because we're an established party, and so when people want to protest, they very often look for something completely different. They may very well look for an independent candidate in a particular area. And again, where we have been...
Sometimes go to opposition parties as well, though, don't they?
Well, and where we've been in control of councils, or where we've lost a seat because the person who is in the seat at the moment is Labour. I mean, again, these are features where people are looking for something different from what they've got at the moment. So that can happen as well.
OK. Neil Griffith, thank you very much for your analysis of those results. You're watching Vote 2019, the local elections, live on Sky News. These are the latest pictures from Stoke-on-Trent. A couple of the results there started to come in. We'll bring you all the latest throughout the night. So stay with us. You're watching Vote 2019, the local elections, live on Sky News. We have a look now at the current state of the parties. Bad night for the two main parties. Labour down 54 seats so far. The Conservatives down 72 seats. Lib Dems are up 57. Greens up 14. UKIP down 18. And there's a couple of councils that we're keeping our eye on. We'll bring you them just as soon as we get them. Bath and North East Somerset could be an interesting one. And of course, there is the council area for Jacob Rees-Mogg's constituency and also Bath. But we are hearing a few rumours that the Conservatives could be having a few issues in that council that they currently hold. A big win in one ward for the Lib Dems, a 20-year-old Ryan Mills defeating a Conservative who has been a councillor longer than Ryan has been alive. So we'll be bringing you that result, among others. Both of the big parties, though, have seen some disappointing results so far, but there are many more to declare. There's also evidence of the anger of some voters towards the parties. Images shared on social media of ballot papers spoiled in protest at the delay to Brexit. And let's have a look, shall we? A bit of a recap of some of those councils that have changed hands so far. And we're going to start in North East Lincolnshire. Now, that is where the Conservatives have gained 5 seats, taking control of the council. Heavy Leave voting area there. In St Albans, where it's a Remain voting council, the Liberal Democrats have picked up 7 seats, meaning the Conservatives lost control of that council. And we can travel now to Southend-on-Sea, where the Conservatives have also lost control. They've lost 8 seats. And in Peterborough, where the Conservatives are down 4 seats, that has meant that no party is in overall control in both of those councils. Tandridge Council has also fallen to no overall control. That's after the Conservatives lost a total of 8 seats, 2 to the Liberal Democrats and 6 to independent candidates. That really is the story of the night in many ways, the good performance by independent candidates. Well, we are joined with our panel, who will be with us as these results come in. Mo Hussein is the Head of Public Affairs and Campaigns at the Political Lobbying Media Relations PLMR and a former Special Advisor to Amber Rudd. Faisal Shaheen is the Director at the Centre for Labour and Social Studies. John McTernan is a political strategist and commentator, former Labour advisor to Tony Blair. And just joining us, our new face on the panel is the MP Tom Brake, the Lib Dem spokesperson on Brexit. Well, shall we start with you, Tom Brake? Pretty good night for the Lib Dems so far. You were starting from quite a low base though, weren't you?
Well, I think we're probably on track to have the best result that we've had certainly for the last 15 years or so, so it's a great night for us. We're holding the councils that we control, and we are challenging in places like Chelmsford, where potentially, I'm not sure whether we will gain control of it, but we are making very, very severe inroads into the Tories. Places like St Albans, where we've knocked out the Conservative leader of the council. And I think for us, in places like St Albans and Eastleigh, for instance, that means that we are positioning ourselves to challenge the next parliamentary elections, because often we build from a strong local base to take parliamentary seats.
Just worth interrupting you there, because we are just hearing from Wokingham, which is John Redwood's backyard, the arch-Conservative Brexiter. The Conservatives have lost 10 seats. They are retaining control, and the winners are the Liberal Democrats. They're 8 seats up. Again, it's a bit of a Remain voting era. I mean, are we seeing the revenge of the Remain voters?
Well, there may be some of that, although, of course, there are other parts of the country, such as Sunderland, for instance, where we're making gains, which, of course, was an area that voted to leave. So I'm not sure that one can necessarily make the automatic connection between a Remain area voting Liberal Democrat. It's happening all over the country in different parts, whether they will leave or remain.
Do you think you're benefiting from the fact that Change UK or the independent group aren't standing in these elections?
I think we're benefiting from the fact that we've got Liberal Democrats standing and are fighting hard. And clearly, I suspect that the story of tonight is going to be Liberal Democrats making gains, Tories perhaps not doing quite as badly as they might have done, and Labour, frankly, who at this point should be making a very significant number of gains, falling back, and I think that is catastrophic for the Labour Party.
Some Lib Dem sources telling us that they think that they've won in Chelmsford and North Norfolk. I mean, is that? I don't know what you're hearing. I don't know.
Well, Chelmsford, I think for us to win, we had to gain a very large number of seats. I went there some months ago, and it was looking very good for us. And if we manage to do that, I think that'll be a fantastic success for us.
OK, thanks very much, and we'll come back to you, I'm sure, as the night goes on. Mo, let's bring you in, shall we? Hearing there from Tom Brake about the Lib Dem resurgence, taking votes off the Conservative Party. I mean, do you think that we focus a lot, don't we, on Brexit areas, but actually there are a lot of Remain supporting Conservatives as well. Do you think that perhaps these voters are punishing the Conservative Party?
I think there's an element of that. I mean, it's not, I think there are issues that voters care about beyond Brexit as well, which is important to remember.
We need to remember this,
and I think sometimes in the Westminster bubble, in the vacuum, we kind of focus a lot on that. But yes, there are the Remain side of the Conservative Party, and the Prime Minister has been kind of walking this tightrope for a while in terms of which side does she get off on? Is it the ERG side? Is it the Remain side? And you also have a lot of Remain MPs who have voted for her deal as well to leave the EU. So it's not kind of a clear picture. But I think people need to find a political home somewhere, and I think maybe what we're seeing is a bit of this, is a bit of people.
Faisal, let's bring you in, shall we? It's now 3:30 in the morning. We're getting a bit more of a picture about where the night's going. And really, for an opposition party, you'd be expecting Labour to be picking up more seats by now, wouldn't you?
I think it's actually quite a mixed picture. It just seems to me that there are local factors in different places that are at play. So in, places like Cambridge, Labour's held on and done well, which is a very Remain area. In other places, they've found in Leave seats that they're losing. So it is actually not really clear yet why what is happening is happening.
It's almost like one of the trends seems to be Labour doing better in the south and actually worse in the north, which perhaps is slightly counterintuitive.
Well, it's not actually, because what we've seen is that the geography of Labour votes has been changing. Now, not to say that that's okay, but that has been happening. So potentially that's just playing out a bit more today. And, it is, I do think that there is going to have to be some reflection for the Labour Party, for us, in terms of, this is a historically bad government and, the Brexit mess up and austerity and the rest of it, and why it is that some of that blame has somehow formed on Labour councils, and that part of that is because Conservatives are very good at blaming the Labour council for cuts and closures of libraries, which is obviously not their fault because they've got much lower budgets, but part of it might be just the lack of cut-through of certain messages that Labour are putting across.
I mean, we had the
Brexit stuff, obviously.
We had a similar thing from Neil Griffiths just a few moments ago saying that it's Conservatives blaming Labour for the cuts. But, I mean, surely that can't be the sole explanation for this. I mean, are there other... What do you think is the
I think there's an element of that. Like I said, I think the geography of voters is changing for Labour. I think the position on Brexit...
those northern Leave voting seats?
But this is the thing that's quite tricky about it, because on the one hand you can say, well, they'll be really upset because if you make any kind of positive noises about a second referendum, then people will be upset. But on the other hand, there's, the Remain seats are also upset with Labour. So I don't know. I mean, I think maybe Labour, I think it has come to a point where Labour needs to go strong on one side. But I do think there's something going on here. Having been in local council elections, say last year, seeing actually Conservatives are very good at putting out leaflets that blame Labour councils for things that actually they've basically had their hands tied on because they have much less funding from central government. So, yeah, I think there's a number of different things happening here, and it is still relatively early in the night. Let's see, but every time these things happen, you've got to learn from it. But it might also be Lib Dems coming back from a low base. It might be because Brexit has very much muddied the waters. So how much we can really extrapolate from this, I think, is questionable.
And how much do you think the Lib Dems are picking up the protest votes, the kind of plague on both your houses vote?
Well, I'm sure that is part of it. In some cases, it will be actually very local campaigns around perhaps very specific issues to individual areas where perhaps we've got a very effective campaign team who are winning. But I think people are clearly very dissatisfied with the two major parties. It is probably about Brexit, where the Conservative Party has completely failed to deliver on that. And against a backdrop which is of a government which is in a complete meltdown. I mean, the number of ministers who have been forced out of government, resigned, most recently been sacked, is really without precedent. And that's why I do think that Labour should be doing much better. It's not a mixed picture. Labour are losing councils and they are losing seats. If you compare, say, to 2011 when Ed Miliband was the leader, in those set of elections, the Labour Party gained just under 900 seats. The Labour Party are on track to lose seats against a government which is the most disorganised, disunited, chaotic government that we've seen, certainly in the 22 years that I've been a Member of Parliament.
OK, well, at that point, let's bring in our State of the Parties graphic, shall we? So if you're just tuning in, this is where we are right now. And we're talking there about the Lib Dems. One of the big gainers from the night so far, they are up to 154 seats right now. That's gains of 65. Labour and the Conservatives, a much gloomier picture. Labour down 53 seats, the Conservative Party down 82 seats, and they've also lost 4 councils as well. The Greens are up 14. Independents up 74, which really is quite a total there. UKIP down 18 seats. So we can bring in now our election analyst, Professor Michael Thrasher, to try and guide us through some of those numbers. We're getting a bit more of a picture now, aren't we, about where the night's heading?
Yes, I mean, as more of the English Shire districts declare, it's beginning to show that the Liberal Democrats are recovering their position in some councils, like, for example, St Albans. These are places where they did very well in the beginning of this century, and then when they joined the coalition, they simply got wiped out in many of these places. And we've seen a very gradual recovery in other areas. For example, they won the Bath constituency in the 2017 general election. So they did slightly increase their parliamentary representation. And now there is evidence that they are beginning to increase their position in councils like Bath and North East Somerset. We're also hearing about Chelmsford. And in some cases, these are councils that they've controlled briefly, again, in the lead up to when they joined the coalition government. In other cases, they've never controlled these councils. And of course, the more the Liberal Democrats win seats, make net gains, this makes it so much harder for Labour to gain any traction, really, in these Conservative strongholds. So therefore, they will not only bring light upon themselves, but at the same time, they will take it away from Labour. So Labour really now, this is a critical, pivotal moment for Labour. If they don't start to demonstrate that they can make seat gains and council gains in southern England, then they'll lose the narrative, if you like, to the Liberal Democrats. So it's a very crucial part of the whole local election experience.
Looking at some analysis here from Will Jennings, who is pointing out that the Lib Dems are making gains across the board in areas that voted for both Leave and Remain. And just some of these councils that we know that they're doing well in. Chelmsford, for example, was a 52.8% Leave vote. North Norfolk, a 58.9% Leave vote. Is that surprising from a party that has really positioned itself around Remain, or is it signs of the Lib Dems becoming the protest party of the South, if you like?
Well, I think you've got two stories in parallel here. I think in places that clearly voted for Remain, and let's remind ourselves there's only 43 of the 248 councils that did vote for Remain that are voting overnight. It's quite clear in those places where the population did vote to Remain that there is only one party that has a clear Remain story to tell, and therefore they would naturally pick those votes up. Elsewhere, in places that voted Leave, the Liberal Democrat vote is going up similarly, and there it is a question of I can't vote Conservative, I can't vote Labour, there isn't an independent support. What do I do with my vote? I give it to the Liberal Democrats because they historically have been, if you like, the reservoir of protest voting. So it's fascinating that there appears to be, in terms of the explanation for the Liberal Democrat improvement, you can argue on the one hand they're doing well in Remain areas, why wouldn't they? But they're also doing well in some Leave areas because they're seen as the protest vote.
Michael Thrasher, thank you very much. We'll be coming back to you over the next couple of hours. Well, the results are coming in, and we can see right now Labour are down a net 2 councils, the Conservatives down a net 4. We'll be bringing you all of those results as we get them throughout the night. Welcome back. A breaking council result to bring you now, because Labour has gained Trafford in Greater Manchester from no overall control. The last time that Labour had control of Trafford Council was all the way back in 2002, so the Tony Blair years. They'll be pleased with that result. It was one of the key targets for them. Previously Conservative held before falling to no overall control in 2018. Full details of that council result coming up soon. In the meantime, we can take you to Stoke, where Sky's Lisa Dowd is standing by. Lisa, what's happening where you are?
Well, the seats are coming in thick and fast at the moment. We've had 9 declared so far, and amongst those, a couple of Labour gains and a Conservative gain as well. I am joined by Anne James, who is the council leader at the moment, a city independent, because it's a coalition here of Conservatives and city independent councillors running the council at the moment, but it is a key Labour target as well. So I'm also joined by Mohamed Pervez, who would like to be the next council leader and have Anne's job. I mean, first of all, to you, Anne, how do you think you're doing tonight?
As yet, we haven't had all the results in, so of course until we get those in, then we won't have a true picture of what's going on at the present time. So that's what we're waiting for, is the results to come through.
And you're in the great position, I guess, of not being in either of the main parties, so perhaps doing well out of the Brexit issue, do you think?
The city independents have always had a reputation in the city going back to 1998 when we first started. And of course the reason we started is so that we could concentrate on the city as a whole. We don't have a whip. We don't have big parties turning around and telling us what we can and we can't do. So we are here actually to represent the people of Stoke-on-Trent. And over the past 4 years that we've been in power, we've done some fantastic work. We've set up a housing company which is building new houses on derelict land that had been actually just sitting there fallow for about 20 odd years. So you've actually seen the city moving forward over the last 4 years.
And in spite of all this great work, has Brexit been on everybody's minds? I mean, you mentioned to me you'd had some spoilt ballot papers in your ward. What was written on those?
When we went out, of course we were talking to voters, and of course they're turning around and saying democracy has completely gone out of the city, out of the UK, for the simple reason people voted to come out of Europe. And it seems as if the big parties are just ignoring everybody's wishes.
Is that right, Mr. Pervez? Is that what you're hearing? I mean, you want to be the next council leader. You've retained your seat, so congratulations. What have people been saying to you? Are they interested in the local issues, or has it all been about Brexit?
Well, here in Stoke-on-Trent, which was the capital of Brexit, there was considerable noise at the doorstep regarding Brexit, and people being frustrated that no progress is being made with respect to Brexit. But I think it's important that, and our main challenge has been to convince the public that this is about local elections and it is not about Brexit or what might be happening at Westminster at the moment.
Do you think you managed to do that?
Well, we have gained some seats. It's too early to say whether we have taken control of the council. City independents have been very opportunistic and said, well, we actually support Brexit, but they have no control with what's happening in Parliament as well. However, there is absolute frustration amongst residents that there's nothing happening with respect to Brexit. However, I think it's a shame that our candidates are being punished for the turmoil in Westminster at the moment.
It'll be interesting to see what picture emerges a little later here tonight. 35 seats still to go here.
Lisa, thank you. Well, let's have a little look in more detail at the result we've just seen coming in from Trafford, which Labour have taken from no overall control. We can give you the full figures now. That's Trafford in Greater Manchester. We think it might be Labour's best result so far. Labour up 6 seats, the Conservatives down 9, the Lib Dems up 2, the Greens up 1. I mean, Trafford has historically had some significant Conservative support. There's a few prominent Conservative MPs in that region as well, people like Graham Brady, for example. Emma Barr, how worried do you think the Conservatives will be about the performance in Trafford? They seem to be losing their grip on the area.
I think that this is obviously a disappointing result for the Conservatives. You can't deny that. But I think it does need to be taken in the context of the whole country and all the different results. I think that, as we said before, the Conservatives were expected to lose seats, but it hasn't been anywhere near as bad as people feared, well, the Conservative Party feared. And if you compare it to Labour, it's been a bad night for both the main parties, but I think after 9 years in opposition, you would expect Labour to be making much more gains like Trafford, and this is quite an isolated incident.
John McTernan, do you think we can expect to see Jeremy Corbyn hot-footing it up to Trafford tomorrow, potentially?
Yeah, look, every leader wants to define their results in the best way for them. Winning Trafford is a big scalp for Labour. And that point that you made, which is it takes... you have to go back to the Blair days to see Labour running Trafford. So yeah, we're seeking to say, look, this is the sign that we're on the march, we're on the way, and it is a bad result for the Tories to lose ground in the northeast and the northwest. It's bad for them because that's really where they hope to start splitting the Labour vote. You know, split Labour, make Labour leave votes in the north. And Labour gained in the south. But
well, let's bring in Mo at that point, shall we? I mean, it does feel as if Trafford is exactly the kind of area that the Conservatives have been underperforming.
It does, and it will be disappointing for the Conservative Party, but I think if you look at the places that there have been gains, like North East Lincolnshire, you know, there have been some surprising results across the board. And I think the main point is that Labour is the party of opposition. Labour wants to be in government. Labour should be doing much better than it is now to actually achieve that aim, and we have not seen the numbers pan out in that way.
So what's your take
There's
on that?
been like a very clever game of expectations management, because I know from at least the Labour people I know, there wasn't this sense of like we're going to gain lots of areas, but what the Conservatives did really well, and Conservative commentators, was to say we're going to lose like 500 seats or whatever. So
they were saying 1,000. I mean,
well, exactly, right? So I mean, we have to be careful in the story that's being told tonight.
At the same
a little
time, though, part of the reason why we're expecting Conservative losses is because the last time these seats were fought was a high point for the Conservative Party.
Yeah, I mean, and I think some of what's happening with like Lib Dems coming back, Greens picking up the independents. Labour, look, I'm not going to say that Labour, you know, I wouldn't hope that Labour would do better, but we'll see at the end of the night. But what I would say is that there are specifics in each of these areas, and you can hear it when you go to these different areas, and you've got to understand that there's specifics to that particular area and what's going on.
Of course, yeah.
In terms
thank
of that
you
conversation.
both very much for being on the panel with us. Lots more results coming up in just a few moments. It's 4 o'clock and you're watching Vote 2019, the local elections, live on Sky News. Votes are being counted in councils across the UK. It's been a difficult night so far for the two mainstream parties. Voters have been reaching out for alternatives. Both the Conservatives and Labour have surrendered control of councils. And it's been a night of celebration for the Liberal Democrats and Independents. Both have shown significant gains.
I think we're probably on track to have the best result that we've had, certainly for the last 15 years or so it's a great night for us.
The Conservatives have achieved one of their targets, keeping hold of Swindon. Disappointment again for Labour. They will need to win back councils like Stoke if they're to show they have the mettle to win a general election. There is one overriding message from the ballot box, none of the above, as angry voters hit out over the Brexit failure. Hello, good morning. Well, the pattern of the results of the local elections is now becoming clearer, and it shows the voters so far turning on both the Conservatives and Labour. Theresa May has been battling the fury of her angry party for months, and her party has lost nearly 100 seats so far. But Labour is also down, and both Labour and the Conservatives have lost control of councils. But the Liberal Democrats have revived, winning more than 60 seats so far, and it's also been a good night for the Green Party and Independents. Well, now you're looking at the state of the parties right now, and the story really is bad night for both Labour and the Conservatives. Labour down 53 seats and 1 council net. The Conservatives down 96 seats and 4 councils in total. The Lib Dems up 75 seats, so some strong gains there for the Liberal Democrats, and also the Green Party up on 16 seats gained overall, and UKIP down 18, they're on just 10 seats now. Look at the bottom column, though. The Independents, some of the biggest winners of the night, 2 on 76 seats. Well, let's have a look now at some of the councils that have changed hands so far tonight. In Trafford in Manchester, Labour has picked up 6 seats and taken control of the council, one of their best performances so far. In North East Lincolnshire, though, the Conservatives gained 5 seats to take control of that council. And in St Albans, the Liberal Democrats picked up 7 seats, which meant the Conservatives lost control of the council. Heading over to Southend-on-Sea, the Conservatives have also lost control. They lost 8 seats there. And in Peterborough, the Conservative Party down 4 seats, which means that no party is in overall control in both places. Well, Sky's Lisa Dowd is in Stoke for us tonight, one of the most hotly contested places. Labour optimistic there. Are they still optimistic, Lisa?
Yeah, they are, and I think we've just got another seat about to be declared. So if that happens, I will just go off to that because it's so loud when it happens. But at the moment, results are coming in thick and fast. 9 seats declared so far. Amongst those seats, a couple of Labour gains, 1 Conservative gain, and 35 seats to go. But this is a key Labour target. It was always a Labour stronghold, but in more recent years, it's switched between Labour and no overall control. In the last 4 years, the city has been run by a coalition of Conservatives and City Independents. Now, within that party are independent councillors, but also defectors from Labour and UKIP. I'm just going to break off. We'll take this and then we'll see who's done well. And just 1 more to go, I believe.
In Stoke-on-Trent, you can see what it means to some of those individual councillors getting elected or re-elected in some of these seats. Well, these results really are coming in thick and fast now. There are a few main threads that we can kind of glean from the evening. Both main parties seem to have had a pretty mixed bag. The Conservative losses are picking up, but of course Labour perhaps not making the gains that many people expected as well. Our political correspondent Lewis Goodall is at the Sky News Centre with an assessment of how the parties are doing. Lewis.
Yeah, Sophie, we're getting a really clear idea now, actually, of what's happening up and down England anyway, and a sense of what the political landscape might be when dawn finally breaks. Let's have a look at some of the key contests we've had so far. Now, the Conservatives, they've lost 82 seats. It's not a terrible performance. Indeed, they've had some victories. For example, in North East Lincolnshire, that's a council that they've never had a majority on before for the first time since it was created in 1995. So it seems that they are continuing, the Conservatives, to advance quite strongly in strongly Brexit voting areas, despite their total failure to deliver Brexit. Of course, they also thought that they might lose Swindon Council as well. Labour targeted it in 2018, they targeted it in 2019 this time as well, but actually the Tories have done rather better, picked up a seat or two, and they've kept control. Worth bearing in mind, though, actually, if you look at the overall percentage of the vote in Swindon, Labour actually doing a bit better, and on a uniform swing there, then you might actually expect to see Labour potentially take the key seat of Swindon South at the general election, but nonetheless a local level victory for the Tories. It's also worth saying the Conservatives losing some ground in places like Southend. They've lost control of the council, losing 8 seats to a combination of Labour, Lib Dems and the Independents. Labour, now, you normally, when you've got an opposition party, 9th year of opposition, you'd expect it to be going this way, gaining seats. In fact, we were talking about if they could gain 100, 200, 300, 400 seats. At the moment, Labour are down 53 seats. Better than the Conservatives, but hardly much better for an opposition party anyway. For example, the Tories have gained Walsall from no overall control. They've taken 2 seats from the Labour Party. One really key victory, though, for them, obviously, in Trafford that we've had in the last half an hour or so. Really stonking performance, actually, in some of the seats. They've seen enormous swings from the Tories to Labour, about 15% or so. If Labour were experiencing swings like that, they'd be having a fantastic night. But as it is, the Lib Dems, meanwhile, seem to be the big winners. 65 gains so far. We've heard so much in recent years about hashtag Lib Dem fight back. Well, it might actually be credible hashtag this time. They've had solid gains in places like Liverpool and Newcastle against Labour. And I'm told by Lib Dem sources, they're cock-a-hoop tonight, texting and ringing every political journalist who's still awake, I think. They're expecting to win big against the Tories in the Shires, in places like Cheltenham, North East Somerset and Bath and the like. They really are re-establishing themselves, I think, as the protest party, particularly in the south of England, but also in the north against Labour as well. And then, of course, we've got the dredges, what's left of UKIP, with their 170 seats or so. They've lost 18. They have managed to hold on to a few. And, of course, they weren't standing in many of the places where they had stood back in 2015 when these seats were last contested. But so far, Sophie, I think, no doubt at all, it's the Lib Dems who are going to be the winners of the night.
Thank you, Lewis. Well, we can tell you that the Conservative Party have just hit 100 net losses of seats. 9 of them came from Trafford, which Labour have just taken, one of the more affluent areas in Greater Manchester. And I think we can go now to Sky's top election duo, our election analysis team of Professor Michael Thrasher and Professor Will Jennings. Will, we've been seeing some quite dramatic swings in Trafford, right?
Yeah, and it's part of a broader trend. We're seeing quite significant geographical differences in the votes this evening. So we've seen Labour doing actually a little bit better, as we've been hearing, in the south. In the north of England, somewhere like Trafford, an affluent part of Manchester, Greater Manchester, Labour's picking up, making advances, picking up seats. But if you look towards the kind of the cusp of Greater Manchester, places like Bolton, it's actually been going backwards, and that continues a trend that we saw in 2017, where Labour was doing really much better in, of course, in the centre of major cities, with younger voters, with more professional voters, and really losing ground in its traditional heartlands with working class voters and older voters.
And Professor Michael Thrasher, what's your take? We've just passed 4 a.m. now. How's the night unfolding?
Well, it's going more or less to plan in terms of if you are being an optimistic Conservative. The extent of their losses is at the lower end of the scale. The opinion poll projections suggested 1,000 losses. I certainly don't see anywhere near that number. And they won't celebrate the fact that the Liberal Democrats are doing well, but it's certainly the case that they're not being hurt by Labour. Labour too is losing seats. And I think, just to pick up on what Will was saying there, is that one of the important features of the 2017 general election is the importance of geography, of where people live and the kind of experiences that they have, and this contrast between cities